The screaming started at 2:17 in the morning. I was folding sheets in the basement when I heard it through the vents, high-pitched, terrified, desperate, the kind of sound that cuts through concrete and steel. Above me, footsteps pounded, voices shouted, doors slammed, but the screaming didn't stop. I'd worked in this penthouse for 3 years, cleaning, organizing, existing in spaces between important people. Nobody knew my name. I was furniture with a pulse. I heard someone shout, "Get the doctor back." Another voice, "The medication isn't working." A third panicked, "He's going to hurt himself." I climbed the service stairs slowly, not because I was allowed to, but because I recognized that kind of fear in a child's voice. When I reached the main floor, every guard and staff member stood helplessly in the hallway. Through the doorway, I glimpsed Luca, the boss's 6-year-old son, thrashing on his bed, fighting invisible demons. I'd been invisible my entire life. No family, no friends, no footprint in the digital world that ran this massive city. I survived by being useful and silent. The boss stood at the end of the hallway, his expensive suit rumpled, his face gray with exhaustion. Alexander Corvin controlled half the city's underground economy, commanded respect through fear, and made problems disappear with a single phone call. But tonight, he looked helpless. His head of security, Victor, was explaining why they couldn't sedate Luca further. "Any more medication could stop his breathing, sir. The doctors are clear on that." "Then what do we do?" Alexander's voice was raw. "He needs someone with him, physically present, someone to ground him. Post a guard inside." "We tried. He fights harder when armed men approach. He needs comfort, connection." Alexander's jaw clenched. In his world, weakness was death. Showing vulnerability invited attack. But his son was dying in front of him, and power couldn't solve it. Then his eyes landed on me. I'd been standing in the shadows near the service entrance, half hidden behind a marble column. For the first time in 3 years, Alexander Corvin looked directly at me. "You," he said, "come here." I walked forward slowly. Every eye turned toward me. I felt their judgment, their confusion. "Why her?" "What's your name?" Alexander asked. "Isla," I said quietly. He studied me for a long moment, said, calculating something I couldn't see. "Can you help him sleep?" It wasn't really a question. It was an order wrapped in desperation. I looked past him toward Luca's room, then back at Alexander. "I need 3 things," I said. Victor stepped forward, his hand moving toward his weapon. "You don't make demands." "Let her speak," Alexander interrupted. I kept my voice steady. "First, no guards in the room. Second, no cameras. Third, complete silence from everyone outside the door." "That's not secure," Victor protested. "Your security isn't working," I replied simply. "He needs peace, not protection." Alexander's eyes narrowed. For a moment, I thought he'd refuse. But then Luca screamed again, a sound that made everyone flinch. "Done," Alexander said. "Victor, clear the cameras. Everyone out of the hallway. If anyone disturbs them, they answer to me personally." Victor looked like he wanted to argue, but he nodded and started giving orders. Guards retreated. Camera lights blinked off one by one. Alexander stepped aside, gesturing toward the room. "Save my son." I walked past him and into Luca's bedroom, closing the door behind me. The city lights flickered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting everything in neon blue and red. Luca's room was bigger than most apartments. King-size bed, designer furniture, toys worth more than I'd earned in my entire life. But the boy lying in the center of that massive bed looked small and lost. He was curled into a ball, sobbing, his small hands gripping the sheets. His dark hair was soaked with sweat. When he heard the door close, he looked up at me with wide, terrified eyes. "Who are you?" he whispered. "Someone who wants to help," I said, keeping my distance. "Is it okay if I sit?" He didn't answer, but he didn't tell me to leave either. I moved slowly to the edge of the bed and sat down, keeping space between us. "I can't sleep," Luca said after a moment. "The dreams won't stop." "What do you dream about?" "Bad things, dark places, someone crying." I nodded, not pushing him. Outside, the city hummed with distant traffic and sirens. Inside, everything was quiet except for Luca's ragged breathing. "Would it help if I stayed?" I asked. He looked at me uncertainly. "You won't leave?" "Not until you're ready." Slowly, carefully, Luca shifted closer. Not touching, but near enough that he could feel another presence. I lay down on top of the covers, keeping my breathing slow and steady. After several minutes, Luca matched his breathing to mine. His body relaxed degree by degree. His eyes grew heavy. By 3:30 a.m., he was finally asleep. The next morning, I woke to find Luca already awake, watching me curiously. "You stayed," he said, surprised. "I told you I would." He sat up slowly, looking healthier than he had in months according to the hushed conversations I'd overheard among staff. Color had returned to his cheeks. His eyes weren't hollow anymore. "Will you come back tonight?" he asked quietly. Before I could answer, the door opened. Alexander stood there, still wearing yesterday's clothes. He looked from his son to me, his expression unreadable. "Luca, go eat breakfast," Alexander ordered gently. "I need to speak with Isla." Luca hesitated, then nodded and left the room. Alexander closed the door and turned to face me. "How did you do that?" "I just listened," I replied. "My doctors couldn't help him. My money couldn't help him. But you." He trailed off, shaking his head. "I need you to do this again, every night until he's stable. I'm not qualified." "I don't care about qualifications. I care about results. Name your price." I stood and faced him directly. "I don't want money. I want a real contract, legal protection, and privacy during the nights." His eyes hardened. "You're in no position to negotiate." "Neither are you," I said quietly. "Your son needs me. I need assurance that this arrangement won't destroy me when it ends." We stared at each other in tense silence. Finally, Alexander nodded once. "You'll have your contract by tonight." They moved me to a small room on Luca's floor. Not luxury, but private with my own bathroom and a lock. It was more space than I'd had in years. During the day, I returned to my duties, cleaning, organizing, being invisible. But staff looked at me differently now. Guards nodded when I passed. I'd crossed some line from furniture to person. At night, I returned to Luca's room. We developed a routine. I'd lie beside him, breathing slowly, and he'd match my rhythm. Sometimes he talked about his dreams. Sometimes we just existed in comfortable silence. The third night, he said something that froze my blood. "I remember something from before." "Before what?" "Before I lived here. There was a man in an alley. Rain was falling. He was crying. And there was red." So my voice calm. "Do you remember anything else?" "A car trunk. It smelled bad. I was small. Maybe 3? I was so scared." Nobody had mentioned Luca witnessing violence. His history was supposedly protected. "Have you told your father?" He shook his head. "He says I have bad dreams, that none of it's real, but it feels real." Sometimes memories hide. It's okay to remember. That night, I didn't sleep. I thought about a boy with trauma everyone was ignoring. Alexander summoned me to his office on the 4th day. The room was all glass and steel, overlooking the city skyline. He stood by the window, holding a folder. "I had my people investigate your background," he said without turning around. My stomach tightened. And there's nothing. No birth certificate, no school records, no medical history. It's like you appeared 3 years ago out of thin air. "I keep a low profile." He turned to face me, his expression cold. "Nobody is that invisible, not in this city. Who are you really?" "Someone who survives," I said simply. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." We stared at each other. He was trying to intimidate me, to crack whatever facade I was hiding behind. But I'd lived with fear my entire life. His anger was just noise. "Luca's depending on you," he said finally. "If you betray that trust, you won't disappear quietly. Understand?" "I understand." He dismissed me with a wave. As I left, I heard him make a phone call. "Dig deeper. I want to know everything about this woman." I walked back to my room, knowing he'd never find what he was looking for. I'd erased myself years ago, and I'd done it well. The city had no record of Isla because Isla wasn't my real name. 2 weeks later, everything changed. Alexander announced that Luca would attend a charity gala at a downtown hotel, a public appearance. Good optics. "You're coming too," he told me the day before the event. "Why?" "Because Luca refuses to go without you. He's attached to you." It wasn't a compliment. It was an accusation. But I agreed because refusing would have put Luca back into his previous state. The gala was overwhelming. Bright lights, loud music, hundreds of wealthy people pretending to care about the poor. Luca clung to my hand the entire time, overwhelmed by the noise and crowds. When photographers approached, he panicked. His breathing accelerated, his eyes went wide. I crouched down and whispered the breathing rhythm we'd practiced. "In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. He followed it, matching my count. Slowly his panic subsided. The cameras clicked anyway, capturing the moment. Alexander watched from across the room, his expression unreadable. Later, I overheard two of his associates talking. "Who's the woman?" "Some servant. The kid won't function without her now." Looks like weakness. Or smart parenting. The photos appeared online within hours. Social media exploded with speculation. Who was the mysterious woman with the boss's son? Theories ranged from secret girlfriend to hired therapist to long-lost relative. Alexander was furious. "You've made yourself visible," he said. "That's dangerous." The attention didn't fade. Overnight, I became a person of interest in the city's underground. Rival families wanted to know who I was. Reporters tried tracking me down. Alexander's security had to triple. But something else changed too. Guards started deferring to me about Luca's care. If I said he needed quiet, they cleared the hallway. If I suggested a schedule change, they implemented it without question. I never demanded anything. I simply acted, and people listened. Luca noticed. "You're important now," he said one night. "I'm the same person I always was. No, before nobody listened to you. Now they do. Why? Because I take care of you. And you matter to a lot of people." He thought about this for a while. "I gave you a nickname," he announced. "In my head, I call you Angel." "Why Angel?" "Because you saved me. Angels do that." I smiled, despite myself. "I'm not an angel, Luca." "Maybe, but you're the closest thing I've got." That night, after he fell asleep, I allowed myself to feel something dangerous. Attachment. This boy, with his gentle heart and traumatic memories, had cracked through the walls I'd built around myself. And that terrified me more than anything Alexander could threaten. The rival family made their move 3 weeks later. A man in an expensive suit approached me in the penthouse's rooftop garden. I'd taken Luca there for fresh air. "Beautiful view," the man said casually. "You can see the whole city from up here, all its vulnerabilities." I didn't respond. I kept Luca behind me, one hand on his shoulder. "Accidents happen in cities like this," the man continued. "People fall, cars crash, buildings burn, especially when important children are involved." "Is that a threat?" I asked quietly. "It's a reminder. The boy is valuable. His protection is negotiable." He walked away before I could respond. That night, I changed Luca's sleeping position. Instead of near the window, I moved his bed to the interior wall. I rearranged furniture to create barriers. I checked every possible sightline from outside. At 2 a.m., bullets shattered the penthouse windows. Glass exploded across the room. If Luca had been sleeping in his usual position, he would have died instantly. Instead, he was safe behind the furniture barrier I'd created. Terrified, but alive. Alexander burst in 30 seconds later, weapon drawn, guards flooding the room. He saw Luca crying but unharmed, saw the shattered windows, saw me shielding the boy with my body. "How did you know?" he demanded. "I didn't. I just saw the threat. You couldn't." For the first time, Alexander looked at me with something other than suspicion. It might have been respect. After the shooting, security protocols changed. But something else changed too. Alexander started asking my opinion. "Where are the vulnerabilities?" he'd ask during security briefings. "Who do we trust?" he'd say when vetting new staff. "What does he need?" he'd ask about Luca. I answered honestly every time. Less armed presence around him, more normal childhood, more truth about his past. That last answer made Alexander's face go hard. "His past is none of your concern. Seth, his nightmares say otherwise. He was 3 years old. He doesn't remember. He remembers more than you think, and the secrets are eating him alive." We fought about it for weeks. Alexander insisted Luca's early trauma was buried, gone, irrelevant. I insisted the boy needed truth to heal. Finally, during another sleepless night, Luca whispered something that changed everything. "The man in the alley was Uncle Dante, wasn't he?" I went completely still. "Why do you say that?" "I heard him talking tonight. His voice. It's the same voice from my memory, the one crying over the body." Uncle Dante was Alexander's brother, respected, trusted, a high-ranking member of the family who'd been away for months handling business in another city. "Have you told your father?" I asked. "He won't believe me. He never believes me." "Then I'll tell him. He won't believe you either." But I had to try. I found Alexander in his office at midnight. "We need to talk about Dante." His expression darkened immediately. "What about him?" "Luca remembers him, from before, from something violent that happened when he was 3. Luca was with me when he was 3, under protection. Nothing violent happened. Alexander, children don't fabricate specific details like voices and smells and… Enough. His voice cut like ice. My brother has been loyal to this family for 30 years. I won't have him questioned based on a child's nightmare. It's not a nightmare. It's a memory. You're overstepping. Badly. I stood my ground. If you're wrong, Luca is in danger. If I'm wrong, you lose nothing by investigating. I lose my brother's trust. Is that worth more than your son's safety? The question hung between us. Alexander's jaw worked silently. Finally, he spoke through gritted teeth. Get out of my office. I left, knowing I'd lost that battle. But as I walked back toward Luca's room, I heard Alexander make a phone call. I need everything we have on Dante's movements 3 years ago. Everything. Maybe I'd planted a seed of doubt after all. Dante arrived back at the penthouse 3 days later. Charming, confident, beloved by everyone in the organization. He brought gifts for Luca and praised Alexander's leadership. I watched him carefully. The way he moved. The way he spoke. The way Luca tensed whenever Dante entered a room. Dante noticed me too. Alexander tells me you've become quite important around here, he said during dinner. The miracle worker who saved my nephew. I just help him sleep, I replied carefully. Humble, I like that. His smile didn't reach his eyes. We should talk sometime about Luca's future. About what's best for him. It sounded like a friendly suggestion. It felt like a threat. That night, Luca refused to sleep. He sat rigid in bed, staring at the door. He's here, Luca whispered. He's the one. I know his voice. I believe you. But Dad doesn't. Your dad is investigating. Quietly. But you need to trust me, Luca. Can you do that? He nodded, but fear radiated off him in waves. I stayed awake all night, positioned between the door and his bed, ready for whatever came. I found the evidence by accident. I was cleaning Dante's guest room when I noticed scratches near the baseboard. Fresh wood damage, like something had been pried loose. I shouldn't have investigated. It wasn't my job. But Luca's safety mattered more than rules. I carefully removed the loose board and found a phone hidden inside. Not Dante's personal phone, a burner. Encrypted messages covered the screen. I took photos quickly, then replaced everything exactly as I'd found it. The messages were coded, but some things were clear. References to the heir, discussions of territorial control, plans for transition of power. Dante wasn't protecting Luca. He was planning to use him as leverage to take over Alexander's empire. I brought the photos to Victor first, not Alexander. Victor was loyal, smart, and less emotionally invested. Where did you get these? He demanded. That doesn't matter. What matters is stopping whatever Dante is planning. Victor studied the messages, his face growing darker. I need to verify these. If they're real. They're real, and Luca is the target. Alexander won't want to believe this. Alexander doesn't have a choice. But by the time Victor gathered evidence and prepared to confront Dante, I'd been barred from Luca's room. Alexander himself delivered the order. My brother feels uncomfortable with your constant presence around Luca. You're to return to your regular duties immediately. That's a mistake. That's not your decision. I tried to argue, but guards escorted me from the penthouse floor. As I descended the service stairs, I heard Luca start to scream. Without me there, Luca spiraled. The panic attacks returned worse than before. He couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The doctors prescribed stronger medications that only made him more unstable. I stood in the laundry room, listening to his screams through the vents, feeling absolutely helpless. Staff members gave me sympathetic looks, but couldn't help. Dante's influence had grown too strong. On the third night, Victor appeared in the doorway. Get ready. We're moving fast. What happened? Dante made his play. He's taken Luca out of the penthouse. Claims it's for the boy's safety, but we know better. He's demanding Alexander surrender control of the Eastern Territories, or… He didn't finish. Or what? Or Luca doesn't come back. My blood went cold. Where are they? We don't know yet, but Dante sent Alexander a message. He's willing to negotiate, and part of his terms. Victor looked uncomfortable. He wants you, as insurance. Insurance for what? Against Alexander's retaliation. If you're with Dante, Alexander can't move against him without risking both you and Luca. I didn't hesitate. Tell him I agree. Isla, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Where do I go? Victor gave me an address. A penthouse in the old financial district, 20 minutes away. Alexander will come for you, Victor promised. Both of you. I know. I grabbed a jacket and headed for the door. But Luca can't wait that long. Dante's penthouse was smaller than Alexander's, but just as luxurious. Guards searched me thoroughly before letting me inside. They found nothing because I'd brought nothing. Dante waited in the living room, drink in hand, looking relaxed. Luca sat on a couch nearby, small and scared but physically unharmed. Isla, Dante greeted me warmly. Thank you for coming. I know this situation is unusual. Where's Alexander? Considering his options. As you can see, Luca is fine, well cared for. I have doctors, security, everything he needs. Except me, I said quietly. Well, that's why you're here. The boy seems to need you. I can't fathom why, but family is complicated. He set down his drink. Here's how this works. You'll stay with Luca, keep him calm, keep him healthy, and in exchange, Alexander makes a very reasonable transfer of territory and influence. Everyone wins. Everyone except Luca. Luca gets to live. That's a win. I looked at the boy. He was watching me with desperate hope in his eyes. I moved toward him slowly, and Dante didn't stop me. Are you okay? I whispered as I sat beside him. He nodded but grabbed my hand tightly. I knew you'd come. Always, I promised. That night, Dante put us in a locked bedroom. Guards outside, windows sealed, but he'd made one critical mistake. He'd put us together. I waited until Luca was exhausted enough to rest. Then I whispered in his ear, Do you remember the breathing pattern I taught you? He nodded. Good, because that's our signal. If you hear me counting in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, I need you to do exactly what I say. No questions, can you do that? Yes? Even if it's scary? Even if it's scary. I lay beside him and we breathed together like we had so many nights before. His body relaxed, his trust in me was absolute. Around 2 a.m., I heard voices arguing outside our door. Dante and someone else. The conversation grew heated. Then I heard it. Victor's voice. Alexander's guards had found us. I started counting aloud. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Luca's eyes opened immediately. I pointed to the closet. He understood and moved silently. Stay there no matter what happens, I whispered. Don't come out until Victor or your father says your name 3 times. Understand? 3 times, he repeated. Good boy. The bedroom door burst open. Dante stood there, weapon drawn, his earlier charm completely gone. Where is he? He demanded. Safe. Tell me, or you die right now. I stood between Dante and the closet. You won't shoot me. I'm your leverage. Not anymore. Behind him, I heard shouting. Gunfire. Victor and Alexander's forces had breached the penthouse. The battle was short and brutal. Dante grabbed my arm, trying to use me as a shield. But I'd learned things during my invisible years. How to move, how to survive. I twisted free and drove my elbow into his ribs. He stumbled, and Victor appeared in the doorway. Down! Victor shouted. I dropped flat. 2 gunshots cracked above me. Dante fell. The fighting ended quickly. Alexander appeared, his face controlled rage. Where's Luca? Luca, I called toward the closet. Luca, Luca. 3 times as promised. The door opened. Luca emerged, terrified but unharmed. Alexander rushed to him, dropping to his knees and pulling his son close. For the first time since I'd met him, Alexander Corvin broke. He sobbed into his son's shoulder, all power stripped away by relief. Victor helped me up. You okay? I will be. We left as sirens wailed. Alexander carried Luca, refusing to let go. In the car, nobody spoke, but Alexander reached across and took my hand briefly. Thank you, he whispered. It was the first time he'd thanked me. The next morning, Alexander summoned me again. This time, his office felt different, less intimidating, more human. I need to explain something, he said quietly. About you. About why you could do what you did. You don't owe me explanations. Yes, I do. Sit, please. I sat. Alexander poured 2 glasses of water and handed me one. When I investigated your background and found nothing, I assumed you were hiding something criminal. But Victor did deeper research. He found fragments, pieces of a story. My chest tightened. You survived something similar as a child, didn't you? You needed someone to sleep beside you too. I didn't answer, but my silence confirmed it. Who was it? Alexander asked gently. Who saved you? A woman in a shelter. She was dying of cancer. She had maybe 3 months left. She spent them lying beside me every night, teaching me to breathe, keeping the nightmares away. What happened to her? She died when I was 9. After that I survived alone. I learned to be invisible. To not need anyone. To not be needed. Until Luca, I agreed. Alexander set down his glass. I'm offering you freedom. Full freedom. Legal identity, money protection, everything you need to start over anywhere in the world. My throat closed up. Why? Because you saved my son when I couldn't, because you deserve a life. I should have accepted immediately. Freedom was everything I'd ever wanted, but instead I said, I have different terms. Alexander looked surprised. Such as? Legal guardianship rights over Luca, not custody. You're his father, but documented protected rights to be part of his life, to make decisions about his care when needed. That's unusual. So is this entire situation. I also want independent security, not your guards, my own. And clear exit clauses. If Luca is ever endangered by your organization again, I can remove him from the situation. Legally. You're essentially demanding shared custody without being family. I'm demanding structure, protection, for both of us. This isn't forgiveness, Alexander. It's survival. He studied me for a long moment. Then he stood and extended his hand. Done. I'll have the contracts drawn up by my lawyers. You'll have everything you asked for. I shook his hand. His grip was firm but not aggressive. Equal to equal. One more thing, I said. I want the truth about what happened 3 years ago. The whole truth. Luca deserves to know. Alexander's face went tight, but he nodded. I'll tell him, when he's ready, and I'll tell him with you present. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And that mattered more than anything. The next few weeks tested everyone. Other families sensed weakness in Alexander's organization after Dante's betrayal. They probed for vulnerabilities, tested boundaries. Alexander responded with controlled force. Not the brutal, excessive violence of his past, but calculated precision. He showed strength without cruelty. And through it all, I stayed with Luca. Not every night now. He was healing, growing stronger. But I remained present, available, constant. One evening, a rival lieutenant approached the penthouse gates. Victor met him with 20 armed guards. I watched from the window with Luca beside me. Will there be fighting? Luca asked quietly. I don't think so. Your father learned that showing force doesn't mean using it. Because of what happened with Uncle Dante? Because your father is learning that real power comes from knowing when to fight and when to show restraint. The lieutenant left without incident. No shots fired, no threats exchanged, just a conversation and a mutual understanding. Luca smiled. Dad's changing. We all are, I replied. That night, Luca fell asleep in his own bed without me beside him. I watched from the doorway, ready to enter if needed. But he slept peacefully, his breathing steady and calm. It was the first night I hadn't been required, and somehow that felt like the greatest success of all. 3 months passed, then 6. Luca continued improving. The nightmares became rare. He laughed more, played with other children, started going to school. He still asked for me sometimes, especially during hard days or storms or when memories surfaced. But he didn't need me constantly anymore. You're graduating, I told him one evening as we sat on the penthouse balcony, watching the city lights. Graduating? From needing me every night, you're becoming independent. He looked worried. Does that mean you're leaving? No. It means our relationship is changing. Growing up, that's good. I don't want you to go. I'm not going anywhere. I'll always be here when you need me, but you won't need me the way you used to, and that's okay. He thought about this seriously. Are you sad? A little, but mostly proud. Of me? Of both of us. That night, Luca chose to sleep in his own room. I slept in mine, 2 doors down, available but not present. In the morning, Alexander knocked on my door. Coffee? We sat in his office, the morning sun streaming through the windows. The city hummed below us, alive and chaotic and somehow beautiful. He's doing well, Alexander said. Better than I ever imagined possible. He's resilient. Because of you. Because of all of us. You changed too, Alexander. You learned to be human again. One morning, Alexander called me to his office with an expression I couldn't read. There's something you should know, he said, about who you really are. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Victor finally traced your real history, before you became Isla, before you erased yourself. He handed me a file. Your real name is Sophia Castellano. I stared at the name, memories flooding back, memories I'd buried under layers of survival and fear. Your family was part of the Castellano crime network, Alexander continued. Low level but connected. When you were 7, your father refused to harm a rival's child. He was executed for it. Your mother disappeared. You were supposed to die too. But someone hid me, I whispered. The woman in the shelter. She was a former Castellano associate. She protected you until she died. Then you vanished completely. Why are you telling me this now? Because I need you to know something. Alexander's voice was serious. You could have destroyed me at any time. You had access to Luca, to my home, to my organization's secrets. If you'd wanted revenge for what my world did to your family, you could have taken it. I never wanted revenge. I know. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you trustworthy. He closed the file. You chose to save rather than destroy. That's real power, Isla, Sophia, whoever you want to be. I sat with this revelation, feeling years of hidden identity finally acknowledged. I want to stay, Isla, I said finally. Sophia died a long time ago. Isla survived. Then Isla it is. Over the next year, Alexander restructured his organization, not from weakness but responsibility. He reduced harmful operations, increased legitimate businesses, created systems preventing betrayals like Dante's. Some allies left, some rivals tested him, but Alexander held firm, building something different, smaller but stronger. I'm dismantling 20 years of work, he told me one evening. Not sure if I'm smart or stupid. You're being a father. Sometimes that means sacrificing empire for family. Is it worth it? Ask Luca. Luca played in the next room, laughing, healthy, happy, whole. Yeah, Alexander said quietly, it's worth it. Not everyone agreed. His second-in-command, Marcus, attempted a coup to preserve the old ways. It failed within hours. Not through violence, but because the people who mattered chose loyalty over power. Marcus was exiled, not killed. You're showing weakness, Marcus said as he left. No, Alexander replied. I'm showing evolution. There's a difference. The city's criminal landscape shifted. Other families watched. Some mocked. Others quietly implemented similar changes. The tide was turning. 2 years after I first slept beside Luca, I tucked him in one final time. Not because he was leaving, but because the ritual had served its purpose. Do you remember the first night? I asked. When I was screaming and nobody could help? I remember. I thought I was dying. You were, in a way, but you came back. Luca hugged me tightly. Thank you for saving me, Angel. Thank you for letting me. I stood to leave, but he called out, Isla, will you always be here? As long as you want me. But even when you don't need me, you'll have everything I taught you. The breathing, the courage, the knowledge that fear doesn't have to win. I left his door open. Alexander stood in the hallway. He's sleeping on his own now, he observed. Finally. Does that make you sad? Mostly proud. We saved him. No, he corrected. You saved all of us. We stood in the quiet penthouse, the city glowing beyond the windows. I'd been invisible once, powerless, forgotten, but I'd changed everything. Not with weapons or money, but with presence. With the simple act of lying beside a terrified child and teaching him to breathe. That was real power. Alexander offered me a life anywhere in the world. I chose to stay. Not forever, not trapped, but present. Tomorrow, Luca would wake up on his own. Alexander would continue rebuilding, and I would simply exist, no longer invisible, no longer powerless. Someone who survived, someone who saved, someone who understood that the greatest strength was being present when someone needed you most. I went to sleep, finally at peace.